1.
Welcome to the Data Onco Podcast, where today we'll be discussing the latest in oncology trials. I'm one of your hosts today, and we'll be previewing the ASCO annual meeting, which is just around the corner. We're doing this in partnership with CLIN, a platform that visualizes oncology trial data to help pharma professionals stay up to date with the ongoing research. Joining us from Cadence today, we have Sugata and Zach. Welcome to our podcast. Could you introduce us to yourselves and tell us more about your focus at Cadence?
Absolutely. Thanks, Lynn. My name is Sugata Biswas. I am one of the two co-founders at Cadence. Cadence, we started the company with Lars Smith in 2008. We are a professional services firm focusing exclusively in the healthcare sector. The services we provide are in market research and medical communications. One of the things I feel that distinguishes us is that we have been able to not only do well in each of the domains that we operate in, but also we've created some new methodologies that we call crossover methodologies in the years that we've been around since. My background is on the marketing and business side. I have an MBA from Yale University. But within the company, we incorporate both people with traditional business backgrounds as well as scientific backgrounds. One of whom is joining us today and is Zach Moore. Zach?
Hey, thank you so much, Sugata. Everybody, my name is Zach Moore. I'm the Director of Medical Content at Cadence. And just to give you a little bit about my background as well. So I'm from Cincinnati originally, where I got my doctorate in molecular biology. I came to Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas to do a postdoctoral fellowship, transitioned out of academics into the medical education world, and then medical communications broadly, and got partnered up with Sugata and his group at Cadence. Has been working with them for the past 12 years. So it's been a great experience, and it's great to be here with you, Lynn and Mark.
Thank you both for joining us. We're excited to have you here today. We'll be sharing more insights on the research and developments expected at ASCO this year. I'll now hand it over to my colleague Mark, who is our VP of Oncology, and he will guide us through the data from CLIN on the upcoming trials. Mark, take it away.
Sure. Thanks, Lynn, Sugata, and Zach. Thank you so much. I think the premise of what we'd like to do today is maybe combine showing what my team at LARVOL has built with CLIN and how we're pulling together reactions of incoming disclosures from ASCO. And I'd love both of you gentlemen to be able to speak to why you think that buzz, if you will, is coming through, or where you think buzz might be coming as we get closer and closer to ASCO. So that's sort of the premise here today. So welcome, and I'll go ahead and share my screen real quick. 1 second. Let's see. All right. So could one of you gentlemen or lady confirm if you can see my screen?
Yes. Oh, yes, it's up.
Awesome. So this is CLIN, which you can find. You can actually check out a free version of CLIN at clin.larvol.com. But we're short on time today, so let's just drive right into ASCO. So if I'm using CLIN, what I would do is go over here to our conference tab. And lo and behold, right on the top of the stack of the 130 or so conferences that we cover is ASCO. So titles were released just recently. And what we're doing here in CLIN, amongst other things, is we have a team, enabled by text mining and AI, but also, a team curating, looking at all the social media reactions coming in to CLIN from around, I believe it's around 2,800 or so oncologists, key opinion leaders that we follow, although I hate using the word follow, that we look at their reactions to these disclosures. And I think, so this is just an analytic that I'm showing at the top, is just shows some of the numbers that are coming in. Obviously, these numbers are really going to blow up as we get abstracts and coming out, and we get ASCO upon us, and we'll be processing all of these social media reactions live. But what we can see here is that we're already getting a number of curated tweets, meaning they're all relevant to the trials. And maybe I thought two elements that we could speak to were maybe the long-awaited ESOPEC results, which are obviously leading the pack here in terms of number of social media reactions, or perhaps maybe even I-SPY 2, which I've seen some more movement there. And so I'd love our friends from Cadence to maybe sort of see their reactions, why they think we're maybe getting a lot of oncologists noting what they're seeing on these two trials. And I'll go ahead and drill down, and then maybe I'll yield to Zach or Sugata. Maybe Zach, if you wanted to speak to ESOPEC, or if you wanted to speak to I-SPY, that'd be great. I'll go ahead and pull up live here some of the reactions of those oncologists that I was speaking of. So you can see what they're doing on, I say Twitter, it's X, the artist formerly known as Twitter, but you can see here reactions, and we even use AI to annotate if it's a positive, neutral, or even at times negative reaction to what they think is forthcoming. But Zach, do you have any top-line comments on ESOPEC relative to what we're taking a look at on Clin?
Yeah, so with ESOPEC, I mean, it's going to be popular with the GI people for sure, and the question is, whether or not it's sort of like the perioperative, the neoadjuvant chemotherapy versus the chemoradiation. So this is sort of it's almost like a football game, one team versus the other team. So this is the medical oncologists and the radiation oncologists. And they've been sort of not fighting for dominance, but it's just a question of which modality is best for these patients, and it's one of these open questions, and it's very hard to really determine like what is the optimal approach. Everybody's got their opinion. The medical oncologists have their opinion, the radiation oncologists have their opinion, and so what this study will presumably show is that one will be better. Maybe it doesn't. But at any rate, I think that's what people are excited about and looking at it for, is just to see sort of what is the outcome there.
Yeah, and I'm seeing already sort of a debate forming about maybe avoiding, I don't know, it's being phrased different ways, avoiding radiation for avoiding radiation's sake. Is that enough of a premise? So yeah, I think this is going to be, really exciting there. I had referenced it prior, but in terms of like I-SPY 2, in terms of neoadjuvant and adaptive treatments with biomarkers in breast, maybe I'll punt it very quickly right back to you, Matt. If maybe you had any top lines on I-SPY, I'd love to pull up what we see moving.
Yeah, so what are people saying, actually?
Well, I think there's a lot of tweets to come in. I mean, the I-SPY trial has so many different facets, so we're still trying to see how this plays against, how this fits against ADCs. The most common thing I'm seeing, at least in the tweets and even things I've seen elsewhere, is how this stacks up against Keynote 522, which, I mean, that's a context of neoadjuvant pembro, and then post-surgical.
Well, it's really, it's what's interesting about I-SPY, and it's so funny that this is still ongoing. I remember actually, Sugata, one of the very first projects that we did with Cadence, we were partnered with Laura Esserman, who's like the guru of I-SPY, essentially. And the whole idea is this sort of adaptive design. And really, like, every patient is a separate instance, and you can't treat all patients the same. You really have to figure out, all right, how do we identify the exact right treatment for the exact right patient, right? So, and this is the sort of the thing that oncologists have always been talking about, right? This is always the goal. But with the I-SPY and now I-SPY 2 in the neoadjuvant setting, what that does is it really tries to put this into practice, and it's really complicated. And that's the reason why it's still ongoing, because, there's still a lot of things to figure out. So it's just one of these things where it's like, this is really what we should be doing in terms of clinical development. It does not fit into any neat like pharma category, right? It's not going to lead to approvals necessarily. It's not going to be like a pivotal change in therapy. It's not going to dethrone one type of drug and put another in its place, you know, but it's all about making these incremental steps forward in identifying the right sort of patients and the right sort of therapy for them, essentially.
Sure. And to that end, I just sort of switched my screen a bit, that, you know, we were just looking at sort of conference analytics quickly and just jumping over a different section of Clin. If you go to iSpy, you can see, and this is something we do in Clin, you can see all of the historicity of all the publications, press releases. I mean, it goes on and on and on. I mean, this is such a, you know, a data rich trial. So it's not surprising that, you know, people, it's a sustained interest, if you will. So,
and I think there's probably, when I was looking at the titles the other day, I think there's probably a dozen at least abstracts just on iSpy or iSpy 2 at ASCO. So it continues to be a very rich trial, a very rich undertaking, and is one that, you know, I think is absolutely valid why people are excited about it and are talking about it.
Absolutely. Well, maybe there's a preview for those who are going to keep tracking. If I put you on the spot and I gave you, Zach, or you, Sugata, a minute to predict what is one trial that maybe, and you gentlemen have been checking out Clin with us, but if there's a trial that you're not seeing maybe is quite as much social media movement yet, but what do you think is going to pick up? What are you really excited about coming up in ASCO in 3.5, 4 weeks?
Sure.
Well, Sugata, you were talking to me about this before. What were you thinking about?
Yeah. Let me jump in this one. Yeah, one of the ones that we thought that we're excited about is something again, an idea that Zach previously mentioned. Sometimes some of the most interesting ones that we find aren't necessarily just the ones that are causing a paradigm shift, but are really moving the ball forward. This one that I'm thinking of is LBA 1001. This is the primary outcome from the post-Monarch trial. So as you know, I'm sure many of you remember, Monarch really established therapy of standard of care for the HR positive, HER2 negative breast cancer patients in terms of abema plus an endocrine therapy. Almost as that standard of care is set, of course, the question comes up, so what happens to the patients who progress on that? And this trial really goes to answer that question. So, is it abema? Is it the endocrine therapy? What are we really looking at? And can we get some more mileage out of abema, frankly? And so, we find that this one, I feel, is going to be really interesting because I think it really directly impacts a number of patients who, you know, right now there's really no recourse. I believe, and Zach, please correct me if I'm wrong, but in the NCCN guidelines, if they progress, there's really not a lot of guidance post for these patients. What do you think, Zach?
No, that's exactly right. I mean, and you're absolutely right. Every advance creates another gap in care, right? And so, yes, the Monarch trial, Monarch 2, phase 3, very pivotal, put abemaciclib on the map in combination with Faslodex about 5 years ago, and sort of changed the game. But now, so the label for that has expanded. It's not only with Faslodex; it's with all the other endocrine therapies, the tamoxifen, anastrozole, letrozole, exemestane, et cetera. And it's being used in the adjuvant setting now. So that's good for patients, but then it creates this problem. What do we do for a patient that receives CDK4/6 and then progresses, right? So maybe they received it in the adjuvant setting and then they develop metastatic disease, or maybe they receive it in the metastatic setting and they progress anyway, right? So what do we do next? We don't really know, and the NCCN guidelines, you know, lives and dies by the data, right? And so if you get to that part of the guidelines and you're thinking to yourself, well, then what happens next for that patient? The guidelines say, we just don't know. There's a big hole in terms of the data. And so post-Monarch was conceived of basically a way to answer that question. Is it possible to continue CDK4/6 therapy for these patients? Because one of the things that's interesting about CDK4/6 is that it's kind of a famously synergistic MOA. It does not really have a lot of like drug resistances associated with it. And so it would be kind of surprising if that particular modality was failing as opposed to the endocrine therapy. And so this trial was conceived of to test that hypothesis. Can we continue the 4/6 and then switch out the endocrine therapy? And so presuming that the patients have received one of the like aromatase inhibitors, probably in the adjuvant setting, we give them fulvestrant instead, Faslodex, and see if it continues to work. And so they're comparing the combination with just Faslodex by itself, and we'll see what happens. But if it's successful, then they're reporting PFS, or they're supposed to be reporting PFS at ASCO, then that would be another step forward for patients.
Sure. Great. Well, I'll have to jump in there on you, Zach, because I think we're coming up on time. But if you have, to be frank, is passionate enough of opinion about post-Monarch as our colleague Zach here does, feel free to. We hope we will see your post if you're an oncologist on Clin soon, and hopefully we have a little bit more discussion on the site therein. So really appreciate that, Zach. Really appreciate that, Sugata. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. If you want to see more of the data that we are showing today, or if you want to take a closer look at the analytics, don't hesitate to reach out to me or Lynn on social media, or reach out to us on larvol.com. You can even check out a free version of Clin at clin.larvol.com. And if you want to learn more about Sugata and Zach's work in medical research and medical, market research and medical communications, go to cadencecr.com. I believe that's all one word, cadencecr.com, to check out what these gentlemen are up to. And we will be here. We'll be doing an Onco Data podcast every week for the next 4 weeks with some new guests. And it was great to kick off our pre-ASCO run with Cadence. And thank you both, gentlemen. Thank you, Lynn, for joining me. And thank any of you who are listening out there on the web universe. Cheers to you all.
Great.
Thanks so much, Mark. Thanks, Lynn.
Thank you, everyone.